Hi everyone, Olivia here, and welcome to the final episode of the Girls in Marketing podcast for 2022. I can't believe the year is nearly over already. The Girls in Marketing podcast has definitely leveled up this year, so we thought it was only right to take a look into some of our favourite clips from the podcast this year. We sat down with a range of guests this season, from innocent social media manager and self-confessed comedian Marcus Dean to neurodivergent advocate Ellie Middleton. I just want to take a minute to thank you so much for your continued support listening to the podcast. Whether you're a devoted listener or it's your first time tuning in, I'm forever grateful that you take the time out of your day to listen. The Girls in Marketing podcast wouldn't be anything without you, our listeners, so thank you. We've had a blast of a time, so sit down, grab a snack, and let's dive into some of our favourite highlights of Season 3.
Dia Infante. You don't need to be formally someone's manager to be able to lead, right? So in my case, I knew that our manager, was really busy with very bureaucratic, high business conversations and process management and provider management. So I tried to look at the team with fresh eyes and see what they wanted and what they weren't getting, right? And if there's any way that within my day I could offer some support, because you can't just come in and say, hey, you, I'm gonna assign you tasks now. Am I your manager? No, I'm not.
Yeah.
Right? Hey, you, do you want to learn about this thing? Because I'll teach you. You have to build a relationship, listen out for hints that someone is unhappy in something or that they need support in something. Offer it kind of subtly until you build this relationship with trust where they can directly go like, hey, I want to learn how to do international link building. Do you want to talk me through it? And you go like, yeah, I'm going to talk you through it. Why don't you try out this project? Right? And you can start distributing it. It's obviously beneficial to me as well, right? Because if I had to do a tiny project to handle 404s in our Peruvian website, which we didn't have at the time, that takes some of my time. But if instead of dedicating that full time that I would to doing that process myself, I take someone else to do it, it might take me a little longer, but it's an investment in their job satisfaction, in their job development, and also in my job development, right?
Anu Adegbola.
Yeah, especially with paid search, budget is such a big thing. What I would say is get involved with those questions and get involved with those responsibilities as soon as you can. But also, especially, make sure you're doing it in the right team. And this is why I think with paid search, there's so many different types of agencies and companies, and they'll have different focuses and different cultures. I think more than any other industry, well, in my general opinion, I think, and I can give a good comparison of that because I come from a family where no two of us are in the same field. I think the only two people the same field in my family is my brother and my dad, who are both in medicine. And even that, my brother's more surgical. My dad is medical research, and my mom is an accountant. I've got a sister who's a lawyer. I've got another sister who's a professor at a university. We all do so many different things, and I feel in marketing especially, the culture of your company that you're in is so important. Something that I unfortunately experience with some agencies is that, there can be a blame culture. You make a mistake and it's all like, who do we pin it on so that we can make the client happy and say that we found the culprit and gotten rid of them. And it can be, and that, I feel that that's what, is daunting of a lot of juniors. They're like, oh, I don't want to make any mistake, don't want to touch something in case I get into trouble with it. So I'd actually say my biggest advice, first of all, a few steps before even when you're thinking about budgets, choose the right company.
Yeah,
choose the right company. Choose the right company of people who can see your potential and are willing to help you. And then when you get into that right company and you see that you've got that right team, make sure you communicate everything you're doing
Ellie Middleton.
But like the stats now is like 1 in 7 people are neurodivergent, and it's like if somebody can do that, then they're like tapping into a market of loads of people that aren't currently being marketed to.
Yeah.
I think it a lot when I see even like, I don't know, like products that help me a lot with like my like traits and things like that, and I'm like, why are they not marketing that towards it? You know, like they could be doing this in such a way that they're completely like missing like a thing, like even in terms of like the people and the way that they're marketing, not even like the kind of specific things that they're doing to it. But I think just things like with the communication, just getting your point across really clearly. And, you know, if you're using, I think with marketing, there's a lot of like puns and like I don't know, like sayings and stuff like that. Just make sure, like, it's fine to do that, but just make sure that all the information is there clearly as well. So if you like want to have a joke in the headline, that's fine, that's great, but just that the information that people need is still there if they need it, that it's really clear, like in quite black and white. I think in terms of like the way in which you're blocking stuff out, I think if you can have it kind of like, I think this is just like general good marketing as well, like just be concise with the words that you're using. Like if I see a big paragraph, there's no way I can concentrate, there's no way I can take all that information in. If I can see a few key bullet points, then that's much easier for me to understand, which I think is the general public don't want to read through a massive paragraph of your copy. They want like to get to it.
Ruth Hartnell.
If you're in a meeting and the women keep being interrupted, be the woman to interrupt the man and say you've interrupted her. And do it every time they do it.
Yeah.
Every time they do it. I've been that person, I've been that asshole in the room that's been like, sorry, she wasn't finished. And I don't give a shit who it is that's talking. It could be the chief exec, it could be an intern, it doesn't matter. The amount of times I've been in meetings where men feel like they can interrupt women, and there's literally data to prove it, and infinite stories on everyday sexism on Twitter to prove it. Just be the arsehole to interrupt the men would be one of my first bits of advice. And most importantly, if you don't feel like you can do it for yourself, because it is actually quite awkward to say it for yourself, do it for someone else.
Yeah.
And be like, oh, that's interesting that she wasn't done. Go on, carry on. And just like cut them off. Just cut them off and let them just do the cut off for the other person. Doing something for someone else, I often find, is a lot easier than doing it for yourself. So be the one to cut the man off would be one of my bits of advice. The other thing, if you want to support someone else and you don't know how, particularly if you don't feel confident enough to do it, imagine yourself as your most confident self. Sort of take on a character. You know, like when Beyonce used to go on stage, she became Sasha Fierce.
Yeah.
And she was like, I am that character. Yeah. She's not Beyonce anymore, which is mind-blowing because all of us look at Beyonce and like, I want to be Beyonce. And even Beyonce didn't want to be Beyonce.
She wants to be someone else.
That's mind-blowing, isn't it? Because she is Beyonce. But yeah, so effectively just imagine yourself as this really brave version of yourself, and then it's not even you doing it. Yes. Just act for a little bit. I know people always say fake it till you make it, and I found that advice really unhelpful actually. But if I'm thinking of myself as a character, as if I was writing a character, I found that much easier because the things that were coming out of my mouth were dialogue instead of me saying it. And that was easier for me to think about.
Yeah.
So interrupt the man and pretend you're someone else for a tiny bit, and then you'll feel braver.
Marcus Dean.
The last 2 people before me, and then me included, who did social media manager at Innocent, were comedians. So they obviously think one way.
Yeah.
But we're not the only ones who write for Innocent. Like obviously we've got copywriters who work on the website and work on brand packaging and our ad campaigns. We have the People's Champs, like I mentioned earlier, who are our community management. And they don't come from like a comedy background, and it's picking up the way we say things, and then sort of skewing it more humorous. I think you have to have a sense of humor. If you don't, then like you're not gonna be able to do it. Yeah, but yeah, no, it's interesting because it's definitely something you can hone. I don't know if you can teach it from scratch. I think you can definitely hone it. You can definitely make it better, but I think it's really, as social media manager, like leaving the other people who write for Innocent as social media manager. So John, who did it before me, RIP, he's not dead, he just moved on. He's
I'm
fine.
glad that you've added
he's
that
fine.
in.
No, he's fine. He's got a lovely new job. He's great. And yeah, he's like a good friend of mine. And he's the same. He like did comedy.
Yeah.
Like don't get me wrong, neither of us are like successful comedians. But we try. And yeah, it's really useful because you just sort of, you have that that unique look on things sometimes. And one of like the innocent values is like when we writing anyway, in our like big Bible, which is like what is given to every person who writes for Innocent, even like minor like things. If you write a little bit, you have to read this Bible and sort of learn it. And the big thing is be unexpected. So like the comedy definitely comes into play there, because like anyone could do like the. Actually, that sounds a bit like a diss, so maybe I won't say that. Like, remember like the Noel Fielding style of comedy, where he would just say, "Oh, you're like a hungry badger," or like he would just put two words together, and then it was funny. Like that's okay, but the Innocent tries to be relatable. Like relatable is sort of the thing. So I think you can teach. You can't. You can hone it. You can't teach it from scratch. As long as you have a sense of humor, then you can definitely do it, and you can definitely learn it.
Yeah.
Because every these days anyway, every brand has a tone of voice.
Yeah.
Ours obviously is maybe a bit more, like idiosyncratic, I guess, unique. But everyone's got one now. It's just learning it.
Rebecca Ben.
Well, I moved back into the press office, but this time within like kind of health data.
Okay.
And that's kind of where my love for data came from, because it was seeing the data and being able to use that to tell a story. And the thing is, when you use data to tell a story, it's kind of insight backed. And I think that kind of works in everything that we're doing, is that we need to make sure that any story that we tell is going to resonate with our stakeholders. And the best way to do that is to ask them, or to use that research, or to use that data that's coming in. So if we do a piece of research, or we find out that, people like to hear stories that involve, animals, specifically dogs, which we did. I don't even know how we found out that information. But then we know that if we have any stories that have that kind of angle, which we did in my other job, which was around dog bites, we would then try and package that story together.
Karina Scott.
2023, I think we're going to continue with the authenticity. I think that's going to be it's a name or a buzzword that we're hearing a lot right now. I think that's going to continue. And with that, I think it links into community building. I think it's going to be super important that, brands are actually creating a community around it. I mean, like, how fabulous are you girls do, and the fact that you're kind of like, you've got an actual community of people that want to listen to your content. And with that, I think influencers, and I know influencer marketing isn't new, but what I have definitely seen is more brands outside of the retail space starting to use them. And I remember years ago when influencer marketing became really popular, I went to a talk and they were talking about it from a B2B angle, and everyone was like, what? It's not a thing, because we didn't have the thought leaders at the time. But now I am seeing so many brands that are using the power of influencer marketing.
And that's a wrap for season 3. From myself and all of the Girls in Marketing team, we wish you a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We'll be back and better than ever in January with a brand new season.